Good morning and welcome to our next episode. In episode 5, we were talking about how we could use a tool like PBJ to automate the scanning of our network and maintain network maps, but we stopped short of talking about how we can actually measure differences from day to day. Now, it does turn out that the PBJ tool does allow you to see some differences. For instance, here's just a few examples from the website. When you run PBJ, as we saw last time, it will automatically insert results into the database. But as you run it, if there are differences, it will show you the changes that it's detected as it's running. While this is fine if you're just looking for up-to-the-minute information and being able to search to find hosts, or perhaps being able to find changes between this run and the last run, how can we detect change over time, perhaps comparing not just today to yesterday, but today to last week, last month, or last quarter? That's what we'd like to examine in this episode. In order to do that, there's a few different tools that you might find useful. For instance, one of those tools, called Endeth, is a tool that used to be a separate product available from VineCorp as a free script, but is now included as a part of the NMap tool. So when you install NMap today from the insecure.org site, you'll find that Endeth is one of many different tools that have been installed to support it. As an example of what it can do, there's an example output that we have available here, and we'll also take a look at some of this output in our episode today. Now, personally, I'll tell you that while we're going to talk about using this particular tool and then try to automate it, I personally maintain a copy of the older version of Endeth. The new version of Endeth only was able to provide two different kinds of output, either text-based output or XML output. And while those are both perfectly usable, it used to produce a very nice HTML output that divided the report into three sections. The first was new hosts, then we had missing hosts, and finally, changed hosts. The way it's deployed today, it mixes those all together, so it does make it a little bit more difficult and not as easy for someone to just look and know what's happening. But even the one that comes out of the box works just fine. If you want more information on that older version of the script, or perhaps would even like a copy of it, if you send me an email at dholzer@enclaveforensics.com, I'd be happy to send you a copy of that script. In fact, let me just put that email address here where you can read it. You could just email me here at dholzer@enclaveforensics.com, and I would be more than happy to send you a copy of that script. Now, let's get on with today's episode and talk a little bit more about how we can see what's happening or monitor for change that's occurring within these NMap results. There's one last tool I just want to mention to you that you might find useful as an alternative way of approaching this problem. It's available from a site called unspecific.com, and you'd find it if you went under their software link and then under NMap Tools. The NMap Tools includes a script that can be used in order to gather information from your hosts automatically. You can configure it to run your scans for you, and then produce regular reports. We'll come back to this tool at the end of our episode. Now, in order to do the comparison, let's take a look at what I have currently sitting on my system. I have installed on this system both the Endeth or NMap Endeth tool available from the Unspecific site, and I also have the latest version of NMap installed with the built-in Endeth tool. And I have several different scans that have been run. Now, the ones I'm most interested in are down here, the today.xml and the yesterday.xml. You see, we'd like to have an automated process, as we talked about in the last episode, that's generating these maps every day so that at any time I want to, I can see what I've currently got. But I also need to keep these over time, or perhaps store them in a database as individual scans, so that I can now go back to any point in time and see exactly what's changed or what my network looked at that particular time. Now, looking at this output in the as XML files is not friendly. It's really not designed to be looked at this way, though you could pull it up into a web browser, and if you wanted to, you could even create an XML style sheet to automatically format this into a really nice report. But we're not going to use it in that way. Instead, what I'd like to do is just look for the differences between these two files. Now, we did look at differences back in episode 1 and 2 using tools like the Diff tool. And I can even use something like that here. I could say, let's diff yesterday, that's our baseline, with today, and it shows me what's changed. It shows that on line 14 and 15, there's been this adjustment. This new line is in, and this line has been taken out from 315 and 316, and this line has been added in. So I could do that, but I want an easier to read report, something that's interpreted for me. For instance, if you were someone in the audit field, this is really not a very friendly report, and certainly not something you can just cut and paste or even have emailed to an administrator every day. That's where the Endeth tool comes in. Endeth parses the XML for you and then interprets the results. So I'll Endeth yesterday with today, and it comes back and gives me this very friendly report. Rather than just seeing individual lines that have changed, now I can see which hosts have changed. Now, the output is not terribly difficult to understand, but let me just walk through it. It begins by telling you information about what version of NMap was used, but then it's telling you about the hosts. For instance, on this host here, 10010, it found that port 80 is now listening. So the plus sign is what tells us that this is a change. The host is not a change, 10010, but this port on that host is a change. Now, some of you may be looking and saying, 10010, why that looks like it's a network address or maybe a broadcast address. But over here it's looking at TCP. How could that be? Well, it really depends on your subnet mask. We're not going to get into a big discussion of that here, but if I were using something smaller or, well, depending on your point of view, if I were to change it from a 24-bit subnet mask to, let's say, a 23-bit subnet mask, well, I could very realistically have this as an actual IP address, which is the case in this particular situation. So this is an actual host, though the address seems a little unusual to us. Now, the next section, though, notice that we have the minus sign in front of every line. What that's telling us is that this host is gone. And of course, if that host is gone, all of the ports associated with it are gone as well. And similarly, here's a new host. So this host is new, and here are the ports that it's listening on. So this report does give us all of the information we'd like. We can see things that have changed, we can see things that are gone, and things that are new. Exactly what we're looking for without having to look at hundreds or even thousands of individual hosts. Now, to make this practical again, remember in episode 5 we talked about the fact that we probably would not want to have the information populated in this database from transient networks, like maybe networks that have laptops or where we allow smartphones to connect, because the hosts on those networks are going to change constantly. But if instead we're reducing the scope so that we're only looking at, for instance, our server farms and our desktop computers, those sorts of things, routers and switches, those should not be changing very often. Perhaps we'll see that hosts have disappeared or reappeared because they were powered off or up during the scan, but by and large there will be very few changes, and any change would be something interesting. Well, this is just one kind of report. What else could we do with it? I don't, for instance, want to have to run this tool manually every day. Well, that's where automation starts to come in. So let's take a moment and just show you how easy it would be to automate this process so that we could have daily scans running with difference reports. So I'll call this scanjob.sh. I'll just write it as a very simple bash script. Now, of course, this could be written in any kind of scripting language you like, but since I'm using a Unix machine here, I'm choosing to use bash because it's very, very portable to many different kinds of Unix platforms with very few changes. So to get it started, let me just put in some of the Unix magic that I need in order to get this script to run, tell it to use the shell to interpret it, and I'm going to set up a few variables. Now, as I go through this, I'm really not trying to teach you how to script. We could do that at some other point, and there's even a class that I teach that goes through that. But instead, I just want to show how short a script like this could be and really how easy it is to understand. I'm going to start by setting up a few variables here. I'm going to create a variable to get to the current date, and I'm going to use the built-in date command that's in the Unix operating system, and I'm going to ask it to grab for me the current day, day number, month number, and year number from the host. So I'm storing that into this variable called today. I also want to set up the options that I'd like to have NMap run with. So I'd like it to put XML output, and I'm going to call the file that it puts it into scan dash. Now here I'm going to use that today variable, today's date. So I'll simply put a $, today.xml. So for instance, this would be called 11 July 2011 scan.xml. Well, you can interpret what the name would actually be. I didn't say that quite right. It would be scan-11-07-2011.xml. So now I can maintain lots of different scans, and each one will be named individually based on its day. I'd also like to have a few more options. I'd like to have OS fingerprinting. I want to scan for service versions, and I'd like to scan all possible ports. I also want to take advantage of the ability that we have in NMap, something that I didn't mention in episode 5, to specify a file name that contains lists of hosts you'd like to exclude. We talked in the last episode about creating a file that includes the host you'd like to scan, and we likely will do that at some point, particularly when we're building up this scanning process. But I can also use the exclude file command so that I can simply give it a file name containing all of the hosts to exclude, and then complete the rest of my scans, telling it to do both UDP and TCP scanning, and then finally the network to scan. In this case, perhaps our whole internal network. Next, we simply tell NMap to run with those options, and now here's where the automatic management comes in. Here's what I'll do. Let me remove yesterday.xml. Now you haven't seen this file yet, but don't worry, you'll find out where this comes from in just a second. And then I'm going to have it move today.xml to yesterday.xml. This script would run every day, so the file that's called today.xml would actually have been yesterday's scan. But where does that file come from? Well, what we do is we link today's scan to today.xml. What this does is leave the scan where it is and create another way to reference it called today.xml. Now tomorrow we can move that reference to yesterday, and we can compare one day to the other. And how do we do that? Well, just something like this. So there's that Endeth tool again, and we'll do that same command line we saw just a few minutes ago, but I'm going to tell it to take that output and send it through mail to, well, to whoever you want, with maybe the daily network report, and I'll just send it to myself. That's it. That is the entire script. So I would have to take the time to populate the host to exclude file, but otherwise, now I can set this up to run every night, and then when I come into work in the morning, I will have a report that shows me what has changed on the network since yesterday. Now, this kind of script could be expanded, of course, to do even more. Maybe I'd like to compare today to yesterday, and last week, and last month, and last quarter. And you can imagine how we might modify this script to make this happen. But if you are starting to go down that road, I'd like to go back to that tool that we mentioned earlier, the NMap wrapper and NMap Diff tool that we have available from Unspecific. Unspecific has taken the time to create this tool for us, or these scripts for automating this, and what it allows you to do using the wrapper tool and using the Diff tool is create a fairly friendly output. It looks just like this here, but I'd like to scroll down to just the usage here. Notice that it allows me to set the baseline that I'd like to compare to any number of days in the past, provided, of course, that I have scans going back that far. So under the hood, the author of this tool has taken care of all of the file management and doing the date calculation, so we could compare the today to any point of time in the past to see what's changed, and then automatically send an email to whoever we want to report the results. Well, I hope you found this episode useful. I look forward to talking to you in future episodes, and if you do have any suggestions for topics, always feel free to send me a note, and if you'd like a copy of either this script here or the previous Endeth tool that I mentioned, that creates the HTML output, please just send me an email.